book is dedicated to us. Those of us who know what it means to be raised by alcoholics, addicts, abusers, survivors. Those of us walking around skin deplored by those both kin and not. Those of us, the walking wounded, razor blades rattling in our bellies and demons demanding our bones. Those of us who were not and could never fit the existing design. And so, expanded the vision until it was impossible to complete the vision without us. Those of us papered over with so many labels that our dignity has been treated as conditional rather than actual, and our humanity has been treated as negotiable rather than sacrosanct. Those of us grateful for survival, but longing for living. Those of us in bodies that will never be considered beautiful, fighting battles considered unwinnable. Those of us who never feel like they're part of an us. I see you and I feel you. Those of us working on ourselves even as the world beautifully and brutally continues to work on us. Finally, I dedicate working on me to every version of me that had to survive something, but especially fat breath. May her nightshirts forever be too tight and her mouth eternally smart. Take a brick and go at it with a hammer and chisel. Take a sliver off a terracotta-colored rectangle, a chunk out of the opposite angle. Drill a hole through it, diamond-shaped. Grind an edge of it into beautiful dust. Leave a footprint in it. Spit on it and make mud. Attempt to gather the slivers and bits and dust into a mold to shape it back into itself, to make it a brick. Functional. Worthy of construction, like it's dying to be built into something other than itself. Over a lifetime of chipping, slicing, grinding, decades of dust worn off in delicate layers that will end up in a garbage dump on the worn bottoms of refused shoes. What becomes of the brick? Does it look like a brick still? Able to hold some weight, add to a structure, be useful? Or does it wind up where I grew up, in the backyard of abandoned steel mills, lining tunnels whose open mouths are frozen horrors framing tall grass filled with rust and rocks and bent up razor wire? Brick, house. Mighty, maybe. Dear great-grandfather, I wish I knew your name. Wish I could call you what your mother called you, what she'd call you if she knew what you did to your daughter. If families are made of ancestors as cloth is made of thread, then you are one of many dirty threads in my cloth, fucking up the pattern of love, attempting to obliterate all color. Before I was born, long before, my grandmother was fractured in places that made standing firm impossible. The paper you laid down, her inevitable rustle. The flatness of those sheets predicted the flatness of my mother's forehead, and the thread ties all the way back to you. You were white. I am black. I wonder if you knew that your DNA would darken so nicely this ink that condemns your memory. Is it justice that you only get to live through the pages of my words? Is it redemption that I use the blood from little Nana Jazzy's bruises, the same blood that runs in my veins to tell the parts of her story I know, the parts of her story I've heard, the parts of her story that may not be true but are still her story because her story began with surviving you. What her blood tells me is that she and I and my mother and my aunt were and are women meant to survive. We working on us. We working on us. We working on us. We working on us. Great grandfather. Can you see that the dark skin you tried so desperately to resist, the tender flesh of my grandmother that you never kissed, is what has given you life beyond death? Except I can't blame you. I can't blame you. Blaming you means I'm blaming my grandmother, and I refuse to victim blame my own grandmother. I blame her for being racist, but that also falls on you. No matter how much she was fucked up by you and your abuse, that doesn't mean that she deserved for my grandfather to kick her ass, nor does it mean that she deserved to spit nigger like watermelon seeds from her lips, slide picking in between her teeth like toothpicks. And no matter the racism and trauma that my grandfather went through in the war, it gave him no right to put his hands on anyone. Both of you, all of you, were fucking horrible, and I know that you were horrible because I've lived with and loved and dated and befriended and supported and believed in and held space for and had to tolerate selfish, violent people, but for a lot less time than my grandmother. Knowing that helps me understand my grandmother's violence, her manipulation, her cruelty, and how she gave when she had been given. Not all people who are given shit become shitty. Sometimes they become fertilizer. Y'all gave Nana Jazzy a little too much shit. And I can now choose what my grandmother cannot. I choose to rustle these goddamn pages. 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 We actually did not go through this piece. You guys have not seen this piece, but I feel called to do the piece that's in the voice of my grandmother. This is Nana Jazzy. So, let's see what we do. Ho ho, hey Jack, with my black ass. I know I'm white as a sheet of paper, but baby, let me tell you, all my kids are black, all my grandkids are black. All my friends, neighbors are black, lovers are black. Lovers? Isn't that a joke? It was never about love between me and their black asses, quiet as it's kept. I was trying to piss off that mean son of a bitch also known as my father. Wasn't he a racist fucker? Nigga this and nigga that. I showed him nigga that. 3 beautiful black babies, though the last one had a little more nigga in her than I would have liked. Then again, she wasn't Chef Assholes, not like Pretty Mama and Philosopher. Philosopher's name is also Asshole, but we liked calling him Philosopher to cut down on the confusion. Didn't want Philosopher to think I was talking about him when I cussed out his daddy, that no good, drinking, stinking asshole. To hear it told, you'd think he kicked my ass and I went and cried in a corner somewhere. Not with these size 12s. Not with this 5 feet 11 inches that don't take shit off of nobody. My racist fucker of a father used to make me lie down on newspapers and beat the shit out of me if I made any noise. One little rustle. And that was it. That was it. My eye would feel like the side of a freshly kicked puppy. Surprised, throbbing, dumb. Every time, every single time I was stupid about it. My nose would itch and my leg would jump and my arm would fall asleep. But I think this time he'll understand. This time he'll know I didn't mean to, didn't mean to, and every time he'd take his meaty, calloused hand and land it perfectly against my jawbone. Ever tried to cry and not make a move, a sound? Ever tried to swallow humiliation, heartbreak, and blood? So, by the time Chef Asshole put his hands on me, I was done swallowing any man's shit. Hell, I only stayed because back then you couldn't even get a credit card unless it was in your husband or father's name. Nothing had my name on it, or my mother's name on it, or her mother's name on it, except the faces of our children, and not even our names on their faces, but our eyes, our cheekbones, our pain, passed from one woman to the next like a recipe. My older sister, Hottie, didn't inherit the bitch's brew. She was smart enough to have been born both pretty and polite. She didn't climb trees or run through the graveyard to make it to school on time. She didn't spit or cuss or smoke. So fucking perfect. So fucking perfect. My father asked her to lay the paper down under the table before he made me crawl onto it, that backstabbing, polite bitch. She did it. So fucking perfect. Her chestnut hair with its glints of gold and red made me burn with envy. My hair was dishwater brown to go along with my 2 big teeth, my long chin, my big impossible to find pretty shoes, 4 feet. Hottie was balanced and beautiful on her size 6 soles. I was determined to never be like her and dyed my hair fiery red as soon as I left. Boy, did I leave. By fucking Chef Asshole and having not 1, but 2 black bastards. We never got married. I made sure that I could never come back. My mother had left my father by that time though, but he'd never left me. I showed him how much use I had for shame. When Philosopher got older, I'd take him to the local dance contest and we'd cut up. Jack, hey, hope. They had nothing on us. We would jitterbug, Watusi, and rumba the room wild. Shame. Yeah, not then. Not now. Not ever. I met Blue Suede when Pretty Mama was around 9. She adored him, and he adored her. Blue was a big-time music manager, and this dumbass group of young kids trusted his ass to make them famous. They had a couple hits, but he listed himself as a songwriter on all their songs and took every bit of their bread. Lil Baby still gets the royalty checks. Sharp that Suede. He was a fine man. Tall, dark, and looked sweet as rum. Except he was a little too sharp. Asked too many questions about how I was spending his money even after we got married. Turns out white pussy don't dazzle every black man. He traveled a lot, was gone a lot. Everybody used to ask me what was wrong. Trouble ain't even that big of a deal. Hell, trouble's the best kind of fun if you know what you're doing. If I had my way, I'd spend my days writing and fucking around, getting into trouble every second of every day, dancing, shopping, eating at the finest restaurants, living life jazzy, baby. I mean, I had a conscience. We went to work, volunteered, marched with Dr. King in 68. If the kids and I were downtown doing some shopping, we came across someone homeless, I'd invite them to lunch with us at Woolworths. We'd sit and I'd ask them about themselves and their lives. I thought it was important for my kids to understand who people are beyond what we assume them to be. Had I known better, been a little more savvy, I'd have gotten my poems published instead of letting them float around the house like dust. I'd have figured out how to make it without tying myself down to a man, to children, to dishes and laundry and dysfunction. With Blue gone so much and not much money coming in, this old gal got bored. Jazzy gets bored. Look out. Hey, ho. I started screwing the next door neighbor. He had a family, a wife and all that, but he was fun and I was bored, you know, a little harmless fun. A little summertime tra-la-la. So when I got pregnant, I didn't panic. Mixed kids is mixed kids. They all pretty and all so swirled up that you could never tell who's their daddy. Lil Baby Suede, yes, I gave her Blue's last name, came out exactly 10 years and 2 days after Pretty Mama was born. And she came out looking exactly like the neighbor's kids. I couldn't believe it. And then I lost it. Dressed like a white woman, I took to my bed like a tragic Southern belle. Me and Philosopher, Pretty Mama, Mom. I stayed. They took her home. Because I couldn't handle the fear of what was going to happen when Blue got back. He was so excited to become a father, and as soon as he saw her, he would know. As soon as anyone in the neighborhood saw her, including the wife next door, they would know. What was I going to do? I have no idea what I would have done if Mom wasn't there, even though she was a loon. Bipolar, they said. Lithium, they prescribed. She'd take it for a while, feel better, and then stop. And when she stopped, all hell broke loose. Mom would lose her shit. One time she was gone for hours, and right as we started to worry, the doorbell rang. There was Mom, stark naked and giggling. Taxi driver standing next to her handed me her clothes and said, "This lady says she live here." I thanked him, tipped him, and put Ma into the tub. What is it that is so heartbreaking about scrubbing your own mother's bent, crazy back? Thankfully, the lithium was working when little baby came home because I was the one who ended up having a nervous breakdown. I couldn't take it. Didn't want to face what was coming. So when Blue got home and figured out what was what, he hit the roof. I was in the hospital for months. And poor philosopher, pretty mama, and mom were trying to make it on hardly any money and taking care of this new baby. Blue came to the hospital and accused me of being a whore, a liar, everything but a child of God. I kept my face turned to the wall. Couldn't face him, couldn't let him know he was right. This was trouble. Real trouble. I started to understand how pretty mama could get so nervous that she got sick. I never wanted to leave that hospital bed. You know, Blue was spitting mad. He stuck around, helped out with some money, and I came home soon after. Nothing was the same though. Blue traveled more and more, but we stayed married. I tried to give little baby to the neighbors next door since she looked so much like their kids and it would be easier for everyone. They agreed to take her, but then the wife changed her mind at the last minute. She couldn't bear this little girl who was a reminder of what a shitty husband she had. They moved before little baby turned a year old. Never heard from them or saw them again. Miss Ida Mae. That one picture I have of you makes everything that I ever knew about myself confirmed and not able to be doubted or debated. Your name, which sounds like greens and cornbread, like the blues, like green grass and deep summer. Like a river, flowing slow but sure. Like the woman from Tennessee that would affirm that Black folks did indeed invent rock and roll. Is a lesson in the spirit, knowing what it is before the brain or even the heart can catch up. You're the only Black woman in my lineage to whom I can trace a line who isn't the direct product of an interracial union. Oh, this is important. See, my mama is mixed with silky hair and a complexion that most people assume is Puerto Rican or Mexican. And she was raised by her white mother, my maternal grandmother. That version of motherhood hits different. As hard as it is for me to write these next words, I do believe they are true. That white motherhood that yields mixed children is not often grounded in love. That the white motherhood that raised my mother held a sinister edge that I felt even as a child. It is a motherhood crafted of spite, anti-Blackness festering alongside maternal instincts, lack of knowledge, understanding, and empathy. White supremacy breeding a distrust of one's own children. I am the daughter of that daughter, and none of them knew what to do with my hair. My body burgeoning as early as third grade, my self-hatred pouring in with every joke that poked tiny holes into my consciousness until it was a raw and gaping maw of confusion and despair. You would have known, I think, how to help me navigate, how to line myself with pride, or at least enough common sense to guard against this pointed hatred that helped construct a clear quarter of my DNA. You, Ida Mae, might have taken my face, between hands I imagined to be heavy with labor, but gentle with care, and looked me in my eye and told me the truth. Crafted with the hatred of what and who is black, but that we are the literal essence of the universe and so can and should love ourselves, even if no one else will. You would have shown me how to carry a big body with dignity, how to be big and beautiful and bold without shame. You would have shown me what it means to keep on keeping on, how to walk through this world without looking like what I've been through. You would have taught me strength and conviction well before trauma took up that instruction. I'd like to think that you would have taught me how to view this hatred from a distance, how to observe it, note it, strategize not even against it, but around it, and ultimately find meaning and purpose outside and beyond anybody's white gaze. Maybe. I am deeply speculating here. Wishing, wishing, wishing. Wishing for wisdom from you, my other grandmother, who died a year to the month before I was born. That one picture that I have of you shows a woman staring at the camera with no smile, expression indecipherable. Are you determined, scared, resigned, static? Are you pretending, masking whatever you felt that day, that moment, with the armor of a woman who didn't want to give up anything, not even a smile? Or are you tired and waiting for whoever took that picture to finish up so you can do whatever it is that was next or necessary? I don't know. And I won't ever know. You were gone by the time you were 44. As my fingers type this letter to you as an ancestor, I am 42 and still feeling like I've barely cracked my 20s. I can't imagine being gone a little more than a year from now when I'll turn 44. I can't imagine being gone before 50, which is how old my father, your son, was when his heart exploded. What I want to know most about you is what you were carrying. Why did you stop? What cut you down at the tender age of 44? Of all the ancestors I do not know and have never met, you are the one. You are the one who I miss the most. How can I miss someone I've never met? How can I not miss someone who has eyes just like mine, who is big and lush just like me, sullen and sad, also just like me. From what my research into my ancestry revealed, here's what I know to be true about you. You were born in Topeka, Shawnee, Kansas on June 19, 1932. Almost 2 years after my maternal grandmother, who was born on August 7, 1930. What is also true is that when you were 8, you lived in Kansas City, Missouri, and the census listed your race as Negro. Public records suggest that you had at least 2 children, one of whom was my father. My mother told me that all she knew about you is that you were nice and worked in public relations. Everything else is lost to time. What you'd like to eat, what music you'd like to listen to, whether or not you are an artist, if you drank or smoked or were ever truly loved. I can tell you that I like to eat things with a lot of flavor and love food from all over the world. I listen to all kinds of music, but jazz is my first love. I am absolutely an artist. I've done plenty of drinking and smoking, but not so much now. I have been truly loved, definitely heartbroken, and have loved when loving only caused me harm. I have been loved the most by your great-grandson, who is currently 7 years old and has been and is my greatest lesson in what it means to care for someone other than myself. Miss Ida May. I hope that you are somewhere where you can see your granddaughter. See me speaking up for folks who have been hurt. See my poems and my tears when I read them aloud. See me battling depression and anxiety, beating it back every day as I will myself relentlessly towards liberation. See me publicly relating, perhaps channeling you on stages, behind podiums, and in front of classrooms, doing everything in my earthly power to honor the DNA that straightens my spine and fires my tongue. I hope you can see me raising your great-grandson to be free and happy, and how I say yes to him more than I say no, because this world is full of no, and I have a sneaking suspicion that you and my father heard plenty of that. I know that my mother has, and that even my white grandmother did. My people are intimately familiar with no, experts on it, in fact, and so I say yes to my little boy as much as I can, because that is our next lesson. Love you. If you haven't heard that in a while. If you never heard it enough in your short life, please hear it from me. Even if you were an asshole, even if you were mean, even if you were cruel, abusive, and perhaps a total and unapologetic bitch, I love the whole and entire you. As always, the pressure is on Black women to carry what others can't or won't, and I'm sorry to rest my pride and my promise on your ancestral shoulders, but you're it, Miss Ida May. You are the closest Black woman to me from whom I can draw a direct line to myself, and I am holding that line. I am holding that line. And I am honoring it, and you by honoring myself and all that I have to offer this beat up, fucked up, mercilessly nasty ass world. This place is on my shoulders and on my ass too. But knowing that I am holding it with you, that we are holding it together, that you somewhere somehow know my heart, know my spirit, put some strength into arms that occasionally tremble. Picks up a head, sometimes ready to fall. Puts the steel back into a spine that is prone to melt at the temperature of want. And this soothes me. There is a Black woman to whom I belong, watching over me as I hold the world between my shoulder blades like she did. All that I ask is that you forgive me for all the ways in which I may have dishonored you. Those times that I made choices out of self-hatred rather than love, those times when I was too scared to do right and too stubborn to acknowledge it. Every day, though, I am striving to be better than I was before, to do better when I know better. I hope wherever you may be, that you are proud that I carry your eyes and your blood of what your legacy has become through me, your loving granddaughter, Fat Brat. Let's do a little bit of Fat Brat in the cohort, not the whole thing. She always reading. That little insubordinate brat. I can't stand her fat ass. I remember the first time I met her at her grandmama's house. Fat Brat had on these thick glasses and this thick hair and this thick little body. She was stuffed into a small nightgown that kept riding up on her chubby thighs. That shit made me uncomfortable. That and the way she looked me up and down like she was in any position to judge. I was trying to do her little ass a favor, let her know her place. Ugly, chubby, little girls turn into ugly, chubby women. And women like that can only be happy if they figure out sooner than later that they in no fucking position to judge anyone or anything. So I let her know. I looked her up and down and said, "Isn't that nightshirt a little tight for you?" That did it. Eyes down, nightshirt pulled over knees, face looking as stressed as the fabric, not enough to hide her fat ass. Yeah, that's right. Learn your place, you little bitch. He looked so gross to me. Greasy, curly hair with his lip perpetually curled up as if anything or anyone in front of him only mattered if he thought so and was worthless if not. He'd come to my grandmother's house to meet my mother, courtesy of my aunt, my mother's youngest sister, same mother, different fathers, and her boyfriend, younger brother of the greasy jerk who immediately made me feel uncomfortable. It was Saturday night. Grammy and I were doing what we do best, having a nosh, getting ready to watch the Golden Girls and maybe play a little rummy or crochet before going to bed. As the very sheltered and nerdy 11-year-old I was, this was my definition of an ideal Saturday night. I was in my nightshirt, which was a bit snug, but since I was at Grammys and had no idea that anyone was coming over, I didn't care. That's the last time. The last time. I remember being fully present in my life, happy, with no cares or worries, at peace. In a matter of 10 seconds, after this man walked through my grandmother's apartment door, the trajectory of who I was and who I wanted to be shifted forever. It didn't happen all that night. But this moment is the genesis of my decline. Having his eyes run over my body, squeezed into a nightshirt that I kept pulling down as far as I could, felt like a violation. Like I was wrong. I was sitting there when he walked in and I didn't move the entire time he was there. I was terrified to let my nightshirt shift even a little bit, let alone get up from the couch. I had never met him before, so I have no idea why I was so scared. I mean, I was bracing myself before he opened his mouth, and when he did, I got the blow I was anticipating. Isn't that nightshirt a little tight for you? didn't realize how that affected my self-esteem or how susceptible it made me to the opinions of men, since there were none of significance in my life. I was eager for their attention and approval, and I rarely got much of either. Men both fascinated and terrified me. This man absolutely terrified me. He was loud and obnoxious. Upon meeting the mother and daughter of the woman he's about to take on a date, even at 11, I knew that kind of man is dangerous, because he simply does not give a fuck. Attempting to melt into the couch, I waited for my grandmother to speak up. She said nothing. Waited for his younger brother to speak up. Nothing. They all chit-chatted and joked until my aunt came downstairs, and her and the brothers left to meet my mother somewhere. My aunt was matchmaking and decided to set them up. He hadn't met my mom yet, but he made an impression on me. I remember getting more and more irritated the longer I sat there. I was mad at the tears stinging my eyelids, mad at the ugly peach flower couch my grandmother insisted that she had to have, mad at my nightshirt for not being bigger, mad at my grandmother for not speaking up for me, and mad at my aunt for bringing this asshole to my safe place. I could articulate none of that back then. I knew that I had been made to feel incredibly small and much too big in one singular moment. The first and only gift that the man who would become my stepfather gave me: rage. This asshole completely fucked up our apartment, which I used to love. The Ajayi Friends poster print wasn't in the same place. Swords appeared on the living room wall. Menus from this restaurant called Kentucky Port looked tacky to me on the walls of the hallway. Playboys under a gigantic fish tank that replaced bookshelves. Swords on the wall. Loaded gun on my mother's dresser. I now had to be careful about what I wore around the house. I stayed in my room constantly because I didn't have the energy to talk back every rip. In less than a year, I went from being a bookworm kid with an occasionally smart mouth to a viper who couldn't seem to say anything without a biting edge to my voice. He'd laugh loudly, obnoxiously, drunkenly, and everyone else would sort of laugh nervously too as he made fun of me in front of his friends, his family, my mother's friends, my family. No other adults ever checked him for how he talked to me. As much as I tried to talk back and defend myself, shout him down and insult him back, I was 12. He was a grown man. Swords on the wall. A loaded gun on my mom's dresser. Big steel weights that he worked out with every day in the living room. Ex-military, he could fight. He was armed. He was drunk. Very mean drunk. I was his emotional and verbal punching bag. People hear abuse and they think physical or sexual. People hear trauma and they think war or rape. Verbal and psychological abuse are largely invisible. Also, it's assumed that if you let someone get into your head, it's because you're weak and stupid. You don't have to believe what people say. You don't have to agree with someone's opinion of you. Consider the source, etc. I've blamed myself, my incredibly hurt 11-year-old self, for the choices that an adult man who lived in my house, married to my mother, making him responsible for me, made. It's tempting to want to get defensive of the self who burst into tears, whether I was sad or angry, who was so painfully shy that looking people in the eye felt impossible, who was so sensitive and always had been. It's so tempting to list my deficiencies, my lack, as the reasons why it was so easy for this asshole to get inside my head and stay there. I'm not going to do that. Who berated a judge? Who stayed drunk day in and day out? Who didn't keep jobs? Who didn't pay bills? Who put his hands on the woman he married before he was married to my mother? I picked up Pretty Mama, Nana Jazzy, Fat Brat, and her friend Fancy in Pretty Mama's car that night. I wasn't in no mood for all the fucking estrogen in that car. Fat Brat and Fancy gossiping about boys in school, and Pretty Mama and Nana Jazzy talking about shopping. It was grating on my nerves. I hadn't had nothing to drink that day or the night before because Pretty Mama was always on me about drinking so much. Felt like telling her, bitch, when you met me, I was drunk. Why you trying to change me now? I could hear Nana Jazzy's white ass popping off at the gums, telling me not to talk to her daughter that way, and Fat Brat jumping in like, stop talking like that to my mama. Slick! I slammed on the brakes. Shit, what? What, Pretty Mama? What do you want? I'm thinking and I'm driving. Can't you leave me be? I hear Fat Brat whisper something to her little friend. They giggled and stared at me from the back seat. Can you tell her to shut up? It's raining like a motherfucker. I can barely see and I don't need no little girls talking shit about me where I'm trying to do this now. Fat Brat, you and Fancy calm it down. Slick, watch your mouth around my mother and the girls. I don't need Fancy repeating that foul language when she gets home. Let's go to dinner and try to have a nice meal. Did this bitch just try to check me? I needed to stop this shit with the quickness. I don't want to go to a fucking restaurant, Pretty Mama. I'm tired, it's raining, and I want to go home. It's bad enough that your mother and Fat Brat's friend are staying over. I need to hook up with Otis and find some shit to do while y'all do your nails and shit. Women. Pretty Mama sighed. Look, Slick, we're going to go eat, and then we'll go home. It's not even 7 o'clock. I'm sure you can wait an hour before you start running around with your little friends. Oh, hell no. My little friends. Let me show this bitch who's running the show. That's what she gets for letting me drive her car. A real woman would have never trusted me with her shit. Just for that, I'm fucking Rhonda this weekend. Rhonda didn't care that I was married. Didn't care about nothing except me bringing through some smoke, some drinks, and this dick. Mom, why does he have to come to dinner anyway? It's not like they serve alcohol there. I can't believe this shit. First her mama, then this fat ass brat. They try to humiliate me, embarrass me into behaving, into acting right. Don't she know I don't act right? That ain't me. I'm a wild, crazy, pretty motherfucker. Half Greek, half black, slick. Can't be caught, kept, or checked. Now they both gonna try to check me. Like they in charge. Let me show them who the fuck is in charge. Sheets of rain and headlights, but fuck it. Fuck all this. They want to go to dinner? They can eat the fucking asphalt for all I care. I yank the wheel hard, making the tires skid and spin. Eyes closed, I don't care where we end. Don't care if I hit somebody. I want to get away from them, get out of this car and go where I can be a man, where I can drink and fuck and smoke with nobody checking me, watching me, or saying shit. When I open my eyes, we're across the street, facing the other way. I look in the rearview mirror. Fat Brat looks terrified and won't turn her face from the window. Fancy looks like she's biting back tears, and Nana Jazzy's mouth is twisted like the ends of those soft caramels she loves so much. Fuck it. Ain't nobody hurt. Ain't nobody killed. Pretty Mama staring at me, eyes pleading for me to calm down, go to dinner, behave. I don't know why this pisses me off, but it's more than I can take. You know what? Fuck this bullshit and fuck you. I told you I wasn't in the mood for this. Y'all can go to dinner. I'm walking home. I'm done with this bullshit. Go to dinner with that fat little insubordinate brat in the back seat. You're out your fucking mind. When I'm a block away, Pretty Mama's yells fading into the sunset, I can still feel the throb in my hand from slamming the door so hard. That's what the fuck they get. I tried to make sense of what this so-called therapist was saying to me. Why would I lock my daughter in her bedroom for talking back? Why would I take away her books and clothes? For what? All the kids out here doing drugs and flunking out and she likes to read? A preteen reading and not getting pregnant, and you're telling me to take her books away and lock her up in a bare, empty room? Is that what they teach you in whatever fancy school you went to? You must be out your mind. Well, Mrs. Blowhard, your daughter consistently undermines Mr. Blowhard's masculinity and sense of authority in the home. This undermining led directly to his inability to cope. I've worked with a lot of pre-adolescent African-American girls raised by single mothers, and this issue, what issue that my daughter talks back, every teenage girl talks back. Maybe where you come from, Mrs. Blowhard. This problem with authority that your daughter has can get out of hand if you don't confront it now. At 12, she's still young enough to be turned around. I looked at Fat Brad's face. She was studying the floor with an intensity normally reserved for the latest Nancy Drew. Only the tears running down her face belied her anger and her fear. A lot of people think I don't know my child because I work so much, but I knew her before anybody. Most people wrote off Fat Brad's crying as a sign of her weakness. I knew it was a sign of her rage, her struggle to hold back her anger, to maintain control. I looked over at Slick. He was smirking. Smug son of a bitch. This whole thing smelled like bullshit to me. Supposedly he tried to kill himself, except he ground up expired antibiotics and left most of the cup of coffee they were dissolved in on the kitchen counter, next to a pathetic note, which Fat Brett and Fancy found after we came back from dinner. I felt dumb. Why the hell did I marry this asshole? Right, because Mama and everyone else kept telling me that if I never got married, I'd regret it, that 33 was too old to be single, and raising Fat Brat, that she needed a strong father figure. I don't think this weak piece of shit who staged a suicide attempt and blamed it on a 12-year-old girl was quite what they had in mind. First Goner, now Slick. I would not be humiliated twice. I had to make this work. Fat Brat! Yeah. She wouldn't look at me. Look at me. What? Don't get smart. You need to control your tongue. Do you understand? We can't have this. Have what? He's the idiot that decided to kill himself. Personally, I think he wants attention. He didn't even drink all. That's enough. Do you hear this man? This therapist? Is that what you want? You want us to take everything out of your room? Do you want us to lock you in there because you can't control your mouth? Look at me. No. So you need to straighten up and act like you were raised by me. Apologize to Slick. For what? You upset him. You hurt his feelings. He's a person too, you know. He never apologizes to me. What about all the mean things he says to me? He calls me a fat little insubordinate. The therapist shot me a sympathetic glance, then turned towards Fat Brat. Now, Fat Brat, we're not talking about you right now. Slick's the one who tried to end his life. We have to help him. You can help him. Do you understand that? Fat Brat looked up at the ceiling, refusing to answer. Fat Brat, answer him. My voice sliced through her defiance. She clenched her jaw, gritted her teeth. Yeah, I understand. Can I go to the bathroom? The therapist nodded, and Fat Brat huffed out of the room. Slick grinned at me. I felt sick, but I smiled back. The therapist smiled at both of us, said, "She'll be fine, Mrs. Blowhard. No permanent damage done. I promise." Dear white, supremacist, capitalist, heterosexist, patriarchy. I could list every way in which you've hurt me or betrayed me or lied to me. I could run the list of indictments like a relay, ordering indiscretions and missteps like batons into hand after hand. I could string you up like a necklace of offal, pockets of shit bubbling like baubles underneath the tight casing of intestine. I could let you dangle, hang you from a rafter, and watch you cure into a decent human being. I could sink hooks into your back, and you might possibly like that, my sigh at the sharp metal bit gently through your tender flesh. I could track you down and look you up. I could kidnap you from your house, take you to a cold, dirty, empty room, and swing a light bulb maniacally above your head while I made you look me in the eye as I recount the glorious and myriad ways in which you fucked up and fucked me over. I could make you face me, and I mean nothing but fucking face me. Put your head into a harness, use tiny steel fingers to hold your eyelids open while a tear streamed into your throat and watch you choke on your I'm sorry's, and I didn't know, and I never will again, and that's how I was raised, and maybe you could teach me a workshop. I could get right next to your face, distorted by terror at not knowing what comes next. I could make you feel my breath on the salt drying your face into cracked land. I could speak more quietly than you've ever heard me before, given my propensity for screaming and yelling. I could tell you all manner of torturous ideas that I have lined up for you, tell you how much I dream about hurting you in ways that you would never heal from, and smile while I speak as softly as the grass in the morning. I mean, if I were moved, and I mean so inspired, I could take a blade and run it smoothly down your cheek or across your bicep or around one trembling thigh and let the cool air from the metal breathe against your testicles and leave it there. As you begin to struggle against the rope or cuffs or tape or whatever I've used to restrain you, then watch you think better of your panicked and ill-thought plan to escape and go still. And I'd probably enjoy that. I think about all the ways I could decimate my own humanity in order to destroy you. How I'd gut my own dignity just to debone you and flay you and mount you on the wall of my living room. I think about how much mud would streak my belly if I dragged myself through the gutter to meet you at your level and destroy your faith in everything I could do, all of it. Every bit of it, and never regret it. Except then, I'd be you. I'd be a piece of irredeemable shit. So, I choose mercy instead. I choose grace. I choose a different kind of restraint. And all I'm waiting for now is your gratitude. For you to say thank you for being better than you in every way and be humbled by never having to experience what you have always deserved. The terror you inflict on all of us. We're going to do one last little piece before we wrap up. The dirt and dust feel good on her fingers finally. The slivers, and splinters, and chunks, and bits, and pieces and ephemera of herself are stuffed into the bat wings of her arms, which look like unkneaded dough. The skin of her arms is loose after she's lost over 100 pounds post-vertical sleeve gastrectomy. Fat Brat's after seems like her before. But everyone around her disagrees. They marvel at the clarity of her eyes and skin, the sharpness of her collarbone and chin, the fullness of lips made more prominent by a slimmer countenance. everything broken off Fat Brat's bricks has been soaking in her efforts towards healing and become clay. What can be sculpted from the raw detritus of trauma? Can she be shaped into a vessel for joy? Can pain be smoothed and worked into pleasure? Can she take a brick and turn it into something other than part of a wall holding up what's already steady? Or can she take her beat up brick, all its bits, and become a bird bath? Or a fire pit? Or a battery? Or some break of beauty, some moment where the eye can rest and indulge, where the spirit can be inspired and lifted up? Can a brick become clay now able to be shaped any way that the mind can vision? The weight coming off of Fat Brat is revealing the strength that was already there, an odd juxtaposition of sculpted muscle against lumps of fat and cellulite, all toted under skin that is by turn tight and loose. It is all clumsy in her hands, this shaping of the clay made from the brick she used to be, grinded down on every blade but her own. My foot is firmly on the brake, so I'm freaked out that the truck in front of me feels like it's still moving, or I'm moving. It's hard to tell through eyelids swollen almost shut with tears. I'm driving to the house I just bought. The day before I closed, during the final walkthrough, I found a Confederate flag sticker on the closet door of one of the bedrooms. My heart went cold as I flashed back to my high school days in the same town where I bought this house, to when the flag of my public high school was also the Confederate flag. If I hadn't gotten fired a week after I closed on my house, I might have been better able to cope with knowing that my new home was previously owned by racists, that I'd have to live there with my bear and take care of pretty mama there after the major surgery she needs to have. I make it to the house. After that moment behind the moving but not really moving semi-truck at the spotlight, my psychiatrist who manages my anti-anxiety and depression medication informs me that I actively disassociated, that my brain essentially glitched. I'm tired. It's one thing to live through decades of trauma and harm, and quite another to heal from it. The second I feel like I've gotten a handle on how trauma shows up in my life, my brain glitches behind a truck in traffic and there's nothing I can do but keep driving. I want to be well. Tony K. Bombara's refrain of, "Are you sure, sweetheart? Are you sure, sweetheart? Are you sure, sweetheart?" echoes every time I assert this to myself. It's usually in the morning while I'm still in bed, envisioning myself doing but never actually doing yoga. By late evening, I'm on my third cocktail, having smoked another bowl and generally ready to pass out, numb and exhausted. Yeah, no, I haven't made it to the magical mountaintop of healing. I have not become a meditating, yoga practicing, vegan beacon of grounded, healthy coping and wellness. I have not successfully traversed the path from surviving to thriving, or even from surviving to living. No, I'm at the part of the journey where I'm starting to realize that I am more than dust, more than broken, more than bits that so many have walked on and left behind. I'm starting to understand how I'm clay. How even broken, I watered myself with words and music, with ink and magic, with microphones and mastery, with heart and passion. I scooped together every bit of me that was chipped off, cracked, pulverized, decimated, and cried rivers into the dust. I recognized the dead birds under my tongue, the feathers fecund in my belly, and sang myself back to life, filled in the cracks of my own bones with gold from my throat, copper from my eyes, having gathered and having cried. The clay I've become is ready to be shaped. I am ready to round off but strengthen my lines, smooth out but reinforce my edges, soften my corners, but sharpen my line of sight. So much is worked on me, and worn away some of my shine, worn away some of my weight, lightened my gravity. This is not unique to me, nor for those who came before me. I've been waiting for my lifetime movie moment. So many moments that get read aloud as part of who I am or discussed on panels, but none of those moments ever made me feel redeemed, liked, healed, or whole. Because I've realized that I'm not the one who needs to be redeemed. I didn't cause it or create it. So I'm the one who continues to heal, to continue to work on myself, to continue to give myself the love that I've never been able to find outside of me. Every nick and cut and sliver and slice from the brick of myself hurt. Looking at the scars is painful. Remembering how they got there, who inflicted them, how I let them or did or didn't. So that's when I was still caught up in the idea that I could piece myself back into the shape of who I was before all this. So there's no lifetime movie payoff here. I weigh less and can lift more. But my body is covered in loose skin and the scars of a body that's experienced a lot of trauma. My son, who's home with me, fat as I was at his age, and so beautifully comfortable in his skin. Bet he's more clay than brick. Bet I love him fully as he is, consciously keeping him intact, knowing how the world will try to pull him apart. Already, my son knows who he is and how to name his feelings. My son knows how to communicate his boundaries and his needs. My son already loves himself. Our house has a pool in the backyard circled in bricks. It's where water softens the edges of our hurt, where we relax into clay, shaping ourselves into vessels living for meaning, for pleasure, for joy. The journey I'm on is one that is for life. There is stopping. There is resting. But there is no end. There is no finish line. Working on me is the prize I've been chasing, shaping myself into the hero I always needed from the dust of a broken brick. The prize is being on the path at all, looking at each day as another chance to take another run at building what can stand from the dust of what couldn't. Thank you. Please keep going for Naydja. And please keep going for Jackson Jr. Please keep going for Elastic Arts and Dark Matter Residency and all their supporters. Thank you all so much for hanging out with this very intimate crowd and listening to us. Deeply, deeply appreciate it. Got books on sale back there, and yeah, thanks for coming out. Have a great day.